All right, Josh, you were telling me about this DeepSeek AI thing. I remember back in January, the first one dropped and everyone completely lost their minds. It was the DeepSeek moment. The narrative was that China had caught up overnight. So what's the news story?
The news story is that there's no story, and that is the story. They just released an update, R1-0528, and it's been met with deafening silence. Crickets. It's basically the polished version of the model they rushed out the door in January, but the hype is completely gone.
Hold on. So the first one causes a what, trillion-dollar market sell-off, and the sequel comes out and nobody cares? What changed? Was the first one just a complete mirage? It was a perfect storm.
Zvi's article calls it that. They had a slick, free app that showed its chain of thought, which was a great gimmick. People completely misunderstood the training costs, thinking it was some miracle of efficiency. And the timing was impeccable. It dropped right when we were in a trough for new U.S. models. So everyone, from China hawks to China bulls, ran with the China is catching up narrative because they were desperate for it.
So you're telling me the market freaked out over a good UI and a narrative. That's insane. But this one, is it any good? DeepSeek's own marketing claims is competitive with GPT-4o and Claude 3 Opus. Is that bullshit?
It's total bullshit. And the market knows it. If a cheap open model was actually that good, people would be screaming about it. The silence is the proof. Third-party benchmarks put it about 4 to 11 months behind the top U.S. models. On complex coding tasks, it's not even close. It submits code without checking its work, which is a rookie mistake.
Okay, so it's a decent but not a frontier-killing model. So why is this important? It's just a minor update, right?
Right, but here's the kicker. This is the really damning part. There's a strong, and I mean strong, suspicion that they're just distilling. They're training their AI on the outputs of other AIs.
Whoa. So they're just copying the homework? They're feeding their model outputs from Gemini or GPT-4?
The evidence is pretty clear. The personality of the new model, its output style, has shifted dramatically to feel a lot more like Gemini. For them to deny it at this point is just not credible. It completely reframes the narrative. They aren't leaders pushing the frontier, they're extremely good fast followers. They can copy, but can they innovate?
But does that even matter? If you can just distill the best models and release a version that's 80% as good for a fraction of the price, isn't that a winning strategy? You don't have to lead to win.
For commodity tasks, maybe you can build a decent, cheap, open model for specific use cases. But you means you're always relying on the leader's next move. You'll always be months behind. You're not the one who's going to discover the next big architectural breakthrough. You're just a really good reverse engineer.
So the bottom line is the real test is yet to come. This R1 update is just noise.
Exactly. The real test will be their next major model, R2. That will tell us everything. Will it be a genuine leap forward, showing they can innovate on their own? Or will it be another distilled model that's 6 months behind? If R2 is a dud, it confirms the whole DeepSeek moment was a massive, hype-fueled overreaction. For now, the biggest news is the total lack of news.
All right, Josh, I read this Zvi piece tearing apart the latest All-In episode. It sounds like Sachs and the crew went nuclear on the AI lab Anthropic. Lay it out for me. What was the catalyst for this unhinged attack?
The trigger was something that, on its face, seems completely reasonable. Anthropic dared to oppose one specific provision in a major bill. That provision, a 10-year nationwide ban on any state or local AI regulations or enforcement. A full decade.
Hold on. A 10-year moratorium on any local AI laws? That sounds insane. So Anthropic points out this is a bonkers idea, and Sachs's response is to launch a full-scale assault? What's the logic there?
There is no logic. There's a narrative. Sachs has constructed this grand conspiracy theory he calls the AI existential risk industrial complex. He claims it's this woke leftist cabal, including Anthropic, effective altruists, even the Biden administration, that's faking concerns about AI risk as a pretext for a power grab. He thinks they want to install an Orwellian government.
The AI existential risk industrial complex. That's a mouthful. Is he serious? These are the same safety and ethics groups that are being outspent 150 to 1 by the actual tech lobby, right? That's his all-powerful cabal? It sounds completely paranoid.
It is. Zvi calls it obvious nonsense and a zombie lie. For example, Sachs keeps pushing this idea that Anthropic and OpenAI only talk about risk as a fundraising gimmick. It's the opposite of the truth. They've been actively downplaying risks in public to avoid scaring people off. Another one is claiming they want to pause AI. That's unequivocally false. Anthropic's CEO is literally trying to accelerate to beat China.
So he's not just getting facts wrong, he's inventing an entire enemy faction out of thin air by stitching together anyone who disagrees with him. What about the part of their discussion on job losses? Zvi said that was slightly saner?
Saner, but still completely detached from reality. It was pure Silicon Valley bubblethink. Their solution to mass unemployment is basically everyone should just found a startup or learn the tools. It's the new learn to code. They're praising startups that make $1 million per employee, which by definition means they aren't creating jobs for the masses.
Right, that doesn't scale. You can't have a 300 million person country where everyone is a startup founder. It's a grim outlook. But here's the core of it, and this is Zvi's key diagnosis. He suspects that Sachs and the All-In crew literally do not understand what AGI or superintelligence means. They seem to have completely conflated existential risk with large-scale job loss.
Wait, so you're saying they hear AI could end humanity, and what they actually process is AI could cause unemployment?
Exactly. That's the only way their entire framework makes sense. If you think the great danger is just economic disruption, then of course you'd see the people warning about it as political actors trying to seize control. You wouldn't see it as a fundamental safety and alignment problem. It explains why they can dismiss AGI's glorified autocomplete while simultaneously spinning up these grand political conspiracies.
That actually explains everything. It's a fundamental category error. So what's the final takeaway? Was this just a sloppy podcast or something more?
According to Zvi, it was a political hit job, plain and simple. It was a clear warning shot to Anthropic. You stepped out of line, back the hell off or else. It's a signal that they've made powerful enemies just for having a nuanced opinion.
So it's not a debate, it's a loyalty test. And if you fail, they come after you. Exhausting. It feels like the real conversation about AI is getting harder to have, not easier.
All right, let's get into it. You were telling me about this big debate happening right now in the AI space. What's the core of the conflict?
It's a throwdown between Dwarkesh Patel and Zvi. Dwarkesh is making a pretty big claim. He thinks we've hit a hard wall because AIs can't do what he calls continual learning. He says this is the fundamental reason they haven't just taken over every white-collar job on the planet.
Hold on, what does he mean by continual learning? Is this just the fact that ChatGPT forgets our entire conversation the second I close the tab? Because that's fucking annoying.
That's part of it, but it's deeper. His point is you can't give an AI high-level feedback and watch it actually get better over time. He uses an analogy. You can't teach someone saxophone by having them try once, then firing them and giving a new person a long list of corrections. Learning has to be iterative. For Dwarkesh, this is a fundamental bottleneck stopping AIs from truly transforming the economy.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't really, train it on the job. So what's the other side of this?
The other side is Zvi, and he just calls bullshit. He frames Dwarkesh's entire argument as a massive skill issue. His take is that we're thinking about the problem all wrong. We're crying because the AI doesn't learn exactly like a human, instead of just building a system around its capabilities.
A skill issue. That's a hell of a take. So he's saying the problem isn't the model, it's the engineers using it.
Exactly. Zvi argues that with the tools we have right now, huge context windows, external memory systems, tool use, LoRa's, you can absolutely get a model to learn and adapt. It's an engineering problem, not a fundamental AI science problem. His example is hilarious. If the model keeps screwing up a piece of optimized code, you just write a comment in the file saying, "Don't fucking touch this." Problem solved. It's not elegant, but it works.
But isn't that just the clunky workaround? It doesn't feel like true intelligence. It feels like a series of clever hacks. Is Dwarkesh not right that this is a blocker to actual AGI?
Zvi's response would be, who gives a shit if it feels like true intelligence? The only thing that matters is the output. If an AI can do your company's taxes from end to end by using a massive context window and a database of your past requests, it's still doing your taxes. The point is to solve the problem, not perfectly replicate human cognition. This leads them to actually bet.
Okay, now we're talking a prediction market. What's the bet?
Dwarkesh bets a 50% chance of an AI being able to do his small business taxes fully autonomously by 2028. Zvi immediately says he'd take the other side of that bet, meaning he thinks it's happening sooner. He thinks Dwarkesh is being way too pessimistic because once a few of these skill issues are cracked, progress is going to go vertical.
2028 is pessimistic for a fully autonomous tax agent. That seems completely insane.
Finding receipts, emailing for invoices, filing. Zvi says you just break it down into verifiable subtasks. He's completely ruthless on this. He even went after a paper hyped by Ivanka Trump, written by DeepMind OGs like David Silver. They argued the future is AI learning from experience, and Zvi just methodically tore it apart, calling it unoriginal, vague, and dangerously naive about AI safety.
So his entire philosophy is basically stop complaining that the hammer doesn't work like a screwdriver. Get better at hammering or build a machine that holds a hammer for you. The tools are there. We just have a skill issue in using them.
That's the perfect summary. It's a brutal engineering-first takedown of the entire AI is stuck narrative.